we go. Here we go. All right. So, Steve, would you like to do introductions for the meeting?
Yeah, I'll start. It looks like we only have four. So I can be pretty informal. I'll just start. Yeah, I'm Steve Palmer. I'm from Donner Summit PUD. I'm the general manager here. Um, I guess in August there'll be 2 years from here, so I'm relatively new. Um, and I'm gonna manage the project to bring sewer out there. So, and then Shailene, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Shailene. I am the PR consultant for Donner Summit, and we're here tonight to go over the annexation of the extension project for the sewer line into the Sugar Bowl properties for the East and West villages. We've been working on this for quite a long time, and it's finally coming to fruition. So we appreciate everyone who's joining in tonight and being a part of this process. Chris?
Yeah, most people know me, Chris Parker. I've been around here for 135 years and built most of the sewer systems that we've got here. But I'm partnering in a way where Sugar Bowl Corp provided seed money to get this process going, both engineering and consultation on doing the public financing. And our dog in the fight really is just to provide services to the Schulhouse site. So we do have facilities that are on septic still. Frankly, I think both our patrol headquarters and Schulhouse are only two facilities still on septic. So eventually we're interested in extending to those two areas. But otherwise, we've extended it to everything that we've built thus far and put this original system in 1989.
The rest of the participants, you guys don't have to introduce yourselves unless you want to. I just wanted to make sure you knew who is kind of leading the meeting, which is Donner Summit Public Utility District, because they are the ones who are in charge of this project. And obviously Sugar Bowl through Chris is giving us great support. So
I just have a quick question, Chris. You said the system was put in 1989. What system?
We the corporation annexed into the Donner Summit PUD in '89, which replaced our on-site septic disposal for our corporate facilities. So we bought both water and sewer from the district. The district provides water and sewer, and we extended it down the gondola line. We bored underneath the railroad and the river, and then made our way over to the old Village Lodge. That was the original system put in.
Okay.
Prior to that, it was Sugar Bowl Mutual Water Company using water diversion off of Lincoln, and we had these big failing septic disposal fields where the Meadows townhomes are and the Chalet townhomes now are back in the day.
Great, thanks for the clarification.
Okay, Shailene, if I kind of take over now.
yes, absolutely.
All right. So I do have some slides to go through. Trying to just provide an overview of the whole project and the need and property owner responsibilities. So I'm going to start this show, and please, I want people to feel free to ask questions, but it's probably best if you wait until I get through it. If you want to put them in the chat, if you want to type them in, that's fine too. But we could talk about them all after I kind of get to a stopping point. I'd really appreciate it. So I will hit my share screen, and let me see. Whoopsie. Let's see. There. Can you see the slide there? Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, cool. Okay, so yeah. So here's the overall objective, as Chris kind of alluded to, is making public sewer available to all the parcels in the Sugar Bowl East and West villages. So as you saw the lines, well, maybe didn't, but Chris was showing some lines on his screen before we kind of started about where the sewer was out there. So these green lines on this map show the sewer as we know it at DSPUD from our mapping that we have. So you can see West Village, there's no sewer lines extending up there at all. They stop over here on the other side of the creek, unnamed tributary to the Yuba. And then in the East Village on this side, there is sewer line that property owners banded together and constructed up through a portion through the backyard of some of these houses up in this area. So, but there's a lot of parcels out here still that don't have access to sewer, including some in the area where this homeowner sewer was built. There's still some in that vicinity that need a trunk line extended to them. So the goal for the project is to extend sewer so that it's in front of every parcel, and every parcel in each of these villages can have access to the sewer. And so my talk about project need, why are we doing this and why are we doing it now? Back in 2009, LAFCO approved the annexation of these villages into the DSPUD, Donner Summit PUD service area, and we providing water service at that point in time.
Steve, can you define LAFCO for people on watching?
Oh, sure. So LAFCO is a local agency formation commission, and so they're the ones that when someone wants to annex projects are built and they want to annex into different public utility districts for utilities or into cities, for example, they're the ones that have to review and approve that. So anytime there's multiple jurisdictions, public agencies involved in project approvals, and they get involved in deciding if the project's allowed to annex into, say, the PUD or into the city if there was one, something like that. So they're kind of the overriding agency that governs local agencies in kind of annexation aspects. So they have to approve that at the time, because as Chris was saying, Sugar Bowl didn't provide water anymore. They ceded that over to the DSPUD. What did he say, in 89? So a while before 2009. And so when these lots were developed and this project for East and West Village was developed and the subdivisions were put together through the county, and they had to identify, well, who's going to provide sewer and water service to it. And at that point, this DSPUD had water available right there. There were lines, it was easy to get to. So the project was annexed into DSPUD service area for water. And also at that time it was stated, well, DSP did not have treatment capacity in our wastewater plant at that time. So as it says in the second bullet there, what LAFCO said is, well, that's fine. You guys can have septic for now, but at some point when DSPUD has their treatment plant upgraded, then you need to connect to that sewer. So, I think the specific language was actually within 10 years of treatment capacity being available or the septic system starting to fail. So LAFCO and the county were trying to guard against this widespread failure of septic systems and having, for lack of a term, raw sewage flowing down into the meadows and the creeks there in Sugar Bowl. So that's what they said is you can do it now, but whenever there's sewer available, you need to connect. And as a kind of what's happening now at this particular point in time is that the county is actually saying that to certain people that as they come in with building permits to try and do a remodel, I think some of you know this already, trying to remodel to add bedrooms or intensify the use a little bit, they are telling folks, well, there's sewer pretty dang close, so you need to go connect to it. Or you don't have a replacement area for your leach field on your property, so you need to connect to public sewer before we can approve something like that. So that was impetus for doing this now, was that there are some people in East Village, they've already constructed sewer because they needed it and couldn't do any more upgrades to their septic systems that they needed or wanted to do. So they ahead of us in doing that, which is less than ideal. These piecemeal approaches, it puts the owners at risk for some of the costs, and we end up maybe with alignment or infrastructure in a way we don't really, less ideal for the district to maintain. But in the scheme of things, it's better, so we take it. But so we're trying to get this more of a standardized process and get things done to our standards. And then there's multiple owners in the West Village, as you guys know, that need the public sewer pretty soon, and in 2024 is what they're telling us. And so we're trying to step in the district and facilitate this process and get this going so people can have sewer. Now, the overriding kind of guiding principle that I'm going off of is also in an annexation is that it states that the district is not responsible for paying for extending these public sewers out to the private property owners. the private owners are explicitly required to do that. And the reason really is because it's not fair or equitable to have my district's existing customers pay for sewer service to future development or new customers. So the new people are supposed to pay their fair share of the infrastructure that they need. So that's why we're not funding it. And Chris talked about how they're front loading some of these things so we can get through this process to get the project designed and constructed and then ultimately financed. So I will go on. The next slide is just a couple of pictures about what the village looks like. This is the East Village. The darker green line here that goes up Corn Lily and Paintbrush Hill and partway at Fiddle Neck, that's the proposed sewer as part of this project to extend to other areas. And then there's a lighter green line in here. That's the existing sewer that I mentioned that the property owners built. So I think it was White's and Danielson's, and I'm not sure who else was involved, but there are a couple people that I've talked to that built some of this sewer through here to get sewer to their parcels. So we need to build off of some of that that's in existing and construct some new lines out here. And in the East Village, we count 22 parcels that are not connected to our sewer system and do not have any kind of stub. So they don't have any sewer and they don't have the ability at all to connect to sewer. And then in the West Village, there's no sewer in this West Village at all, as I said. So we have these dark green lines showing how we get across the creek here. And then the trunk line splits up Penny Row this way and then all the way up to the Astor Court back up here. So that's, and that area is 25 parcels. So that's kind of the overall plan of what we're doing. You can see there's, on this map is the master plan. There's two real distinct areas that are very separated. So that affects the project phasing and financing. And so for that purpose, trying to get things constructed in a reasonable time frame and in a rational manner. We're starting with what the engineer had called phase 2A. So this master plan was done a few years back, and before we really thought about which phase was going to go first. And so they named these phases, and unfortunately, the phasing isn't quite matched the order of what we're doing them now, but we're sticking with the original phasing, naming for consistency's sake. So this West Village was phase 2 in that master plan. So we're splitting it up, and this phase 2A piece would take from Old Donner Summit Road across the creek and up Penny Royal this way towards the south. And that gets to the homeowners that are looking for that sewer right now. They're the ones that need it by end of 2024. And then phase 2B would take the line up Muellers and all the way up to Astor. So we'd want to build this piece first, 2A, and then 2B, we'd want to do all that at once. And then phase 1 would be everything that needs to get done in the East Village. And I'll talk a little more about timing on those in a later slide. But I just wanted to give, when I talk about 2A and 2B and phase 1, we kind of get a picture that 2A is the first piece in the West Village, 2B is the second piece, and then phase 1 is the East Village. As far as responsibilities go, like I was saying, that the public sewer is the main in the street. And so the project will construct the sewer mains out in the street or the public easement area. I know in that Sugar Bowl area, there's some streets that aren't streets, they're just easements. And so we have sewer easements in certain areas, so that it just, it's a property rights issue that it's not critically important, but it's important to know there is a Donner Summit PUD infrastructure side on the right-hand side of this slide where it says public property. Well, the project will build this sewer main and then a sewer lateral to each parcel and a connection point for them. So probably will put the clean out there at the property line and leave a connection point here so that piece is all considered public, and we will build it as part of the project. But then it'll be up to each individual property owner to connect to that point and bring the sewer lateral up to their home or wherever they need to connect to in their yard. I know some people have existing septic systems, and so I don't know how that works. Everybody's going to be a little different. I think we'll have to work through that as we go along, but that is going to be their responsibility is to connect to that connection point provided by the project and bring it to their house, and then whatever type of abandonment is required by the county for the septic system. So that part, the septic part of things, DSPUD does not get involved in. That's county environmental health. So we don't know. I don't have real constructive knowledge of what their abandonment requirements will be, but that just an idea of what the cost will be for the private property owners. And then there is
What are the normal procedures for abandoning a septic system?
I don't know, Chris, do you know what they've been requiring out here?
Yeah, so if you think about everything on the left side of that property line, Sugar Bowl intends to help quarterback that on behalf of the villagers. So we would coordinate with environmental health on the abandonment issue, and then, you know, have a contractor that's hitting all these laterals all at once. But basically what they typically want is to compromise the tank some way. It used to be like crush and fill, but I think maybe it's just slurry fill. So disconnect it, fill it full of slurry, so now it's abandoned and that's it. But it does take, you know, some forms with environmental health to make sure it's done right. And then you pick up that connection point and extend it down to the property line. So one of the things that we want to do this summer is that we'll go out and we'll inventory where everybody's tanks are, get the size, so we understand how much it would take to abandon that tank, and then estimate the lateral length for the connection to the public sewers, the public sewer main, so that each property would have its own cost. And we did this with the septic field way back when. I'm not sorry, the propane distribution system. We went through and everybody had a different lateral length to replace the line that went from the new propane main up to the property where we abandoned the tanks. And Sugar Bowl handled that portion on behalf of the villagers and came up with an estimate for every distinct property.
Thanks for the explanation, Chris. That's helpful.
Okay, Chris, just to make sure I understand correctly, so Sugar Bowl will coordinate that effort on behalf of the homeowners on how to abandon their existing legacy septic systems?
Yes.
Okay.
It makes sense because we'll bring in a contractor that could then, whether it's the same person doing the public sewer system or a different contractor that's following behind, and just knocks them all out, and we can, you know, benefit
Are you
from
anticipating that most homeowners are going to be doing their tie-ins to this new sewer mains around the same time frame, or are you going to have to, you know, coordinate, like if some people put it in sooner rather than others, how that timing works out?
Yeah, I mean, our hope would be that we'd be able to do a slug of homes all at the same time, and everybody can benefit from that economies of scale. When we put the propane, the propane system in, a couple people did opt out, and then they went, oh no, I really do want to hook up, and they did it later, and it's going to cost more, that sort of thing. But I think Steve, I mean, technically and legally, if you're within 200 feet of a sewer main, you're obligated, you know, by California law to hook up. But I don't know. It's not like Steve and I are going to get the sheriff out here, you know what I mean? But it's it is the order.
Sewer police are coming. Yes. Okay.
The only other cost, there is another cost I want to bring up. So some people owe a connection fee to DSPUD to pay for their share of the wastewater plant and their share of other infrastructure that they use downstream. So this is to pay back people that are using the system now for their contributions that they made and for your piece of the existing infrastructure. So there's pipes that go from where these projects connect to all those existing pipes. We have pump stations, all that stuff. So there's a connection fee we have, and it's different, can be different for everybody. So I don't want to quote it here, but that is another cost we'll enumerate as time goes on. But it's separate really from this project. It's anybody that was connecting to the system now would pay that fee to pay back. So,
And Steve, you gonna talk
Yeah.
about your wastewater treatment plant in upcoming slides, or you want me to tell you?
I don't have anything on it. What do you want to talk about on it? I don't have
Sure,
a slide.
yeah.
Yeah.
So back in the teens, the wastewater treatment plant that the PUD had was not meeting discharge standards because it does discharge in the summertime on the ski hill at Soda Springs, and it discharges in the Yuba River in the wintertime, and it wasn't meeting discharge requirements. And so there's a lot of environmental pressure on the PUD to upgrade and replace that plant. And so what's there now, after about $25 million investment, is a beautiful wastewater treatment plant with the water that comes out of that thing is cleaner than, what comes out of the lake. So, the good news is all this is going to a state-of-the-art plant so that, that all the effluent coming from your home is being treated correctly. But there is the cost of that plant, and that plant has to be paid for, and that's where the connection fee comes in. And by the way, Sugar Bowl made a huge contribution toward that plant when it hooked up all of its facilities. I think we have probably equivalent of about 200 connections, and I think I've got 83 on standby for future development. So I've been paying on that for quite a while to have a piece of that plant for our future development. And then when I did develop subsequent subdivisions or condos or townhomes, those pre-purchases, were then transferred to those owners. So that was absorbed in the price of their purchase of their property.
Excellent. Very good, Chris. So with that, I was just going to move on to kind of what we're doing now, and then I have a couple slides about the financing and then about next steps. So right now we are under contract with an engineer. It's Auerbach Engineering to design the public portion of the sewer. DSPD, again, like I said, is the lead agency for the public sewer portion. So we're put together engineering documents and bid documents that'll go out to public bid, so we can select the lowest responsive bidder as required of public contract code. And then funding wise, the plan is to have this sewer funded by a property assessment. So we have to do an assessment engineer's report that calculates the cost for each parcel, and then that assessment will be placed on each parcel, and you can pay it off lump sum, or we can put it as an annual property tax payment. So that'll be the option of the property owner. There'll be a period of time where you can do either or. And we've also adopted a separate connection fee. So this property assessment has to be voted on by the property owners. And so if it doesn't get approved, then this connection fee will give us a way to help pay people back that build sewer ahead of when we need it. It'll also give us some revenue to help build this first piece that these property owners need right away. So if we end up with both the assessment and the fee pass, there's a credit back to people that are paying the assessment. So they won't get double dipped. A connection fee will be accredited to them. So it's just kind of showing that district is committed. We're really doing everything we can to get this project moved forward to benefit the property owners out there, and get these septic systems removed and get everybody on the public sewer.
Steve, could you just give us a review again of how all this ideally would work? Because you were saying if it doesn't get passed, then the assessment's used to pay for it, which I didn't follow that. So
sorry.
Let's just assume that all property owners will say this makes sense.
Yep. So
then there is an assessment that's put onto our property, like the property tax, and that pays the PUD back for the cost of the public improvements in the public right of way, but we're all obligated to pay for the work on our property separately. And then you say on top of all that, there's a connection fee we pay to the PUD.
Yeah, essentially, I'll kind of restate it. So there's the piece that everybody's got to pay for their own private connection. So between the house and the street, you got to pay for. And if there's any connection fee, you have to pay that. And then the piece that's in the street they're building, we need that as an assessment on each individual parcel that you can pay up front, or we can put it on the tax bill. And the way that works, the assessment piece of it at least works, is that the assessment gets, so say we pass the engineer, we get the engineer's report, it tells us how much it's going to cost, calculates an assessment per parcel. So that tells everybody what their piece is of the public sewer that's out in the street. And then, but that doesn't give us any money. So then you guys, the property owners, can pay up front. So a percentage of people will give us the money. Usually I've seen it like 10% or so will pay up front. and get it off. That way it doesn't go on their lien, it doesn't get recorded against the property, against title. There's no annual tax bill. They just pay it lump sum. And then, but that's still not enough. So then the remainder of it, we're going to sell bonds for. And so we'll sell bonds against the liens. That'll give us the cash so we can build the project. So we'll use that cash to pay the contractor to build the project. And then that assessment that people pay on their property tax bill will be divided up over 20, 30 years, and you can pay it back over time.
So,
Steve?
sorry, Steve, to add on
Yeah.
to that,
Mhm.
one part of forming the assessment district to go onto the property tax roll, it does have to be approved by voters. And so all of the Sugar Bowl related properties, they will receive ballots to vote in favor of having the assessment placed on their property tax roll. And that is another condition of being able to finance the project.
Right. And that, I was going to talk about that on this slide. It does show the process of how we're kind of going through this. So the first step was an engineer's report
Mhm.
allocating the cost. And then the board has to take action to approve that report and authorize the ballot that Shalene was talking about. So then the ballot will get mailed out, and it gets mailed out 45 days prior to the board hearing, and they're weighted based on financial obligation. And then, so it does require a majority vote of the responding property owners in order for the board to approve it. So it does end up getting approved by the board, and they cannot approve it if less than a majority vote of those returned are in favor. But if the ballots come back and they exceed the number that we get that are opposed, then they can't approve it. So, and then I got one more slide, I think, just one more is on the timeline here. So this is what we're trying to do, and the schedule we're working on right now is by this fall, we'll have construction bids ready for the first segment, that phase 2A piece in the West Village. And then we'd follow with in the spring, the ballots would go out and we'd try and form that assessment district. And the reason we're doing it in that order is so we can get construction bids before we get the assessment engineer's report finalized. The bidding environment has been incredibly volatile recently. And so engineers are very nervous about their cost estimates. And since we only get one chance at the assessment, if it comes in, and we want to make sure that we're really close as we can be with our estimate. So with the bid results from that first phase, that will inform the engineer on the unit pricing for some of these items and what they can expect in terms of construction bids for all the rest of the phases. So we're accelerating this phase for the property owners that need this phase first, but we're also going to use that information to help us make sure that we do a good job of forming this district and calculating the assessment. And so the assessment district will follow in the spring, and then that would allow us to start constructing phase 2A, that first piece in the West Village, in the summer of 2024. And that's the real hard push right now, is to get that construction schedule met so that it's done in the fall of 2024 or before the fall of 2024. And then we'd follow with the following 2 years, 25 and 26, with the remainder West and East Villages. And the timing of that is really more, dependent on construction seasons, and having a good understanding of how long it's going to take contractor to work through those areas. But probably makes sense to have the remainder of West Village in 2025 and then move on to the East Village in 2026. But certainly we'll reevaluate that when we see what the bids look like for the first phase. And if we get some good bid results or the bidding environment looks favorable, we'll try and bundle them up as much as we can, because the bigger project will give us economies of scale, as Chris was alluding to, with like the sewer laterals. Same thing goes for this. If we can bundle up into a bigger project, and then we can get better pricing. And then maybe, if we have to phase the construction for the contractor and tell him he can't start in this area till this happens, we can do that. There's different constraints we can put on him to make sure that he doesn't overextend himself and, doesn't impact the residents too much. but it might make sense to bundle depending on what pricing is like here. So that was it for the slides. I had one, the last one, just there is a website you can go to. You saw that in your invitation. It's live. We'll post the recording up there and the slides up there. You can call me that's the number for the office. That's my number. Well, it's the only number here at the office. And there's my email address, and then there's Shailene's email address. I'm happy to answer as many questions as you have, as much detail as I'm able. And that is it. So if you have any questions, I don't know if you want to just shout it
So-
out. There's not that many in here, I don't think. So I don't know how
So
you want to do it,
Steve-
Shailene.
Steve, one
Yep.
quick thing that came up on the chat. Can we ballpark on the cost per homeowner? We have no sense of scale.
So yeah, I can, because we just adopted this fee that's supposed to, do the same thing as this assessment essentially, which is provide some revenue source to pay for the construction. And that estimate was about $950,000 for the East Village and $1.6 million for the West Village, not including any financing costs. So that's just the construction costs, engineering costs, that kind of stuff. And we are breaking the fee up so it's different per each village, and this would be the assessment too. Each village would be different because they're so standalone, and they don't really interconnect within the scope of the district, at least, or the assessment district. They don't connect. We're bifurcating them as two different assessments or fees. And so for the East Village, we're looking at ballpark $43,000 per lot. And West Village, we're looking at $64,000 per lot. Of course, that is just based on our planning level cost estimates and what we know today, but that's what we're looking at this point.
And so if we were to elect to have this put on our property tax and essentially paid over time, like a normal municipal assessment, what period of time is it amortized over? Is it 30 years?
I think it's 30 years.
Okay.
I mean, it could be as short as 20, but I until I talk more with the bond
And
people,
then
I don't
is
know.
the PUD able to finance at rates similar to what Placer County would?
I don't know what rates Placer County is getting.
Well, I mean,
This-
they're
yeah.
getting municipal rates. I would think that PUD is a nonprofit, so it should be able to get similar.
Yeah, I don't know. It's not a loan per se, it's a bond. So I don't know that we can,
No,
we can't
bonding
borrow.
rate-
I mean, we
bonding
can't,
rate should be
yeah,
comparable is what I'm saying.
yes.
It'd be good to know that.
It'd be good. Yes, we're a municipal agency. It would be comparable to other municipal agencies. Yes. I was trying to see. I thought I had some projections from the bond people, but they're not at my fingertips, so I won't quote them.
So wait, so you've got, for the funding sources, then you're looking at both an assessment district, a connection fee, and selling bonds. Is that, did
So-
I understand that correctly?
Well, the selling bonds is a financing mechanism. The assessment pays for everything, and we just would sell bonds, and then the assessment would pay back the bonds.
But the assessment doesn't pay for the lateral and the connection, right? That's in addition to
Correct.
homeowner. Maybe that's a good question for Chris. Any sense on what that will be in addition to the 64K per person in this village?
I don't, but call it 10, 15,000, say per, depending upon how long laterals are. The problem with it is, depending upon where the point of connection of your house is and where in relation to where your septic field is in relation to this new sewer main. West Village is going to run down the middle of the road, right, or near to it. So some might be better poised, the people in the back row versus people in the front row who septic fields might be in the front of their house towards Disney. So that all has to be assessed this year. So
But Jim, just because you and I have been doing some work on our homes, this is the kind of work that is literally dirt cheap because it takes place in the dirt. So I think Chris is being very conservative saying 10 grand. I mean, you got a backhoe out there to put in the lines, and it shouldn't be that much money.
I think it usually comes down to how long the line is,
Right,
is my experience.
right.
So I want to add a couple pieces here. One is, the expense in the West Village is because there's just nothing out there. There's no real extension. And this line's really is gonna be built under the river. So the good news is, you're not gonna have a pump sitting over there by, the Fisher House that could back up or anything like that. So we're using gravity to get it down to the next lift station, which is down in Summit Crossing. And so that is a little expensive getting it under the river, but that was actually the most cost effective as well. And then my question for you, Steve, is there a public finance for the connection fee available at this point? In other words, pay kind of a clawback. Because there's actually people in the West Village and in the East Village who've already pre-purchased those connections. A few. A lot of people haven't. And like me, who pre-purchased it, it's on our tax rolls, right? And then I'm paying a standby charge. So the question would be, so Dan wants to hook up, he's all in. Sign me up for public financing of the public portion of this. I'll write a check to put the lateral in and crush my tank. Now I got to pay this fee to hook up. Can I pay a catch up and then put the rest of that on my tax rolls like everybody else who's paying? Or do I have to pay that whole fee with a check?
I can double check, but my understanding is no, you cannot use public financing for that because it is a private benefit. It only benefits that parcel.
No, I'm talking about the
The
connection
connection
fee
fee.
for the sewer plant.
I can check to Catherine Hansford about it. She's the
Okay.
economic consultant. She's the one who did all that stuff for the district. I can ask her.
Okay.
I mean, it seems to me that it might be not possible anymore, but I don't know how we would roll it into this, but I can ask.
Well, and maybe not roll it into it, but participate, and then you'd have to add that particular parcel onto the tax rolls. Because you already have the authorization. It's already within that. I think it was a Mello-Roos district.
It's the Mello-Roos district, yeah.
And then you pay a catch-up fee, and then the rest goes on the property taxes. So we'll find that out for the folks here on the call.
But you're specifically talking about folks that haven't paid the full wastewater connection fee, right? Yeah. Okay.
Steve, there was a slide that you showed earlier that had the outlines of phase 2A, 2B, et cetera. And it looked like there were some overlaps.
Yeah. I mean, I'll bring it up again if you will, but the overlaps really are just because we just use Big Pen, basically. It's just kind of to draw delineation. I can bring it back up and then I think I need to switch.
And Maureen, there were some changes to how far 2A extended, and it is pertinent to the project you're working on.
Mhm.
So
So it wasn't
right,
this
so-
one, but it was the next one that had the phases.
yeah, this one has the phases on it. So what Chris alluded to, the phase 2A is going to follow this alignment here and then extend it this way far enough to reach these two parcels that are here in that area.
In phase 2A.
That's 2A. Yeah, that'll be 2A.
But then 2B goes all the way over to
It'll
the
go all the way up this way.
intersection. And that is describing what? Just like where the start of that lateral is, even though there's like some service to a couple of parcels in 2A.
I don't think I'm
Maybe-
following. Sorry.
Where the overlap is happening, like the 2A is showing that there's a lateral serving two parcels, and then 2B is capturing like where the lateral starts for the whole rest of Mueller's. Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't pay attention to the black lines in here really, as far as that's not the hard delineation for between 2A and 2B. It was really just for graphically, as they're working on engineering plans. We've delineated right here, and this black line right here is going to be the end of 2A, and there'll be a manhole there, and then from here up will be 2B. So the 2A will include the laterals to these two parcels, and then that's it.
Okay, I ask because
Yeah.
I'm, that's the area of overlap is the area I'm interested in.
So is it it's one of these two?
Mhm.
Yeah, we talked about it with Chris about this last week and came up with some design modifications to make sure that two-way provided service to these two.
Got it.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. Anything else?
What is the timing of the payments, just so we can intelligently budget for that type of stuff?
So we're looking at this assessment district and the final engineering being done in January, February of 2024. So that's when we'll know the final numbers and be ready to, issue the ballots. So it'd be spring is when 2024 is when we have that number calculated and people can pay the assessment if they wanted to.
Do you have an
Got it.
idea of ballpark numbers at this point in time? Any like ranges or anything?
Oh, for the assessment?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So
what
we
you
were,
anticipate it's going to be, roughly, I mean, not a number we can hold you to, but at least a ballpark.
yeah, I think it's $43,000 per lot in the east lot, and then 64,000 per lot in the West Village. Sorry, East Village, West Village. And that does not include any financing. So that if there's financing involved, that would go up for those people that don't prepay it. So if you prepay, that's the number as we know today. And then if you end up
Mhm.
putting on your tax bill, it'll go up by whatever financing costs there are.
Gotcha. And then you'd have your own personal costs for your own sewer lateral from your property line to the house, as well as the abandonment of your septic systems.
Correct.
Is there anything that would, between sort of now and that kind of, I guess, the ballot, understanding what the ballot is in January, is there, I mean, the steps along the way? My understanding is you filed for the environmental portion of this. Is there anything else along the way that milestones that need to be met that would slow down the project?
I mean, to me, looking at the schedule, the most critical thing and the thing I control the least are those environmental permits. Because we are going across that tributary, we have to make sure we need, figure out if we need to submit permits to the resource agencies and acquire those permits. The plan is to stay outside of any area that would have any impact and then therefore require a permit. So we're staying back away from those areas. That still requires some consultation with the resource agencies to make sure that we're all on the same page. That would be that's the thing that I think. I mean, engineering is pretty straightforward. We've done the surveys. The design is well over 50% done. So that doesn't scare me too much, but the environmental piece of it does, it is something that can change and I don't really control it. So until we get those permits and have our first meeting with the resource agencies, I'm a little bit, cautious, but there's really, the engineers have done everything they can to minimize impacts and make sure we're not touching those areas. So, but we just need to make sure that they're all on board with it and there's no surprises.
And you guys, you've already filed, right, that, or are you in the process of?
I don't think they've submitted anything yet. I'd have to go back to my notes from the last team meeting we had 2 weeks ago. But no, I think about no, we haven't submitted the permit application yet, but we will once we have the 90% plans done. My 90% plans are due within the next 10 days. So they're just addressing my comments from the 50% submittal. So within the next 2 weeks, we'll have things planned to the point where we feel confident submitting.
And do you have a meeting with the environmental people to get a sense of where they come out, or have you already had that?
Honestly, I don't know all the details in that part of it. We do have a DUDEC
Mm-hmm.
as a sub-consultant working on that. And I don't know how much conversations they've had with the agencies about it. Yeah, we will have another PDT meeting next week's the holiday week, so it kind of threw us back. It'll be the week after, and so we'll have some better information on the environmental side, hopefully after that.
And I know that the actual work on the West Village is quite a ways out, but would love just sort of some general guidance. You know, there is one way in, one way out. And so if there is construction on the road, how is that going to impact homeowners during that time frame? What will the MO be? What will during that time?
I mean,
How long?
I mean,
will that, you think?
sorry, go ahead. How long?
Yeah.
I don't have a construction timeline I would feel comfortable sticking to right now. Obviously, we think we can get it done in one season, but I don't know. I mean, the general guidance is, minimize impact of residents and make sure people have access when they need it. I mean, and individual access can be cut off from time to time if they have to, but we'll try and minimize it. But to be honest, Jim, until I see more detailed drawings, I don't really know. I can't really analyze them for construction impacts. I do know it's, like you're saying, it's tight. I've been out there. I know it's tight and there's not a lot of room. There's a lot of trees and driveways and stuff. So I'm sure it'll be a challenge. But
Jim, I'll bring that up with the engineer too, because that gets baked into the liquidated damages with the contractor as to like 15-minute closures, how many, make sure that there's always nightly access with trench plate, that sort of thing. So,
yep.
We went in there twice. I've done twice myself. We put in the water system in quite a while ago, and then we put in the propane system, and we're able to get people to their houses with not much interruption. There might have been a couple times where, they had to go to the sport house for yoga and abandon their cars and walk over or something like that. But we'll get more information on that. But I jotted that one down for our FAQ.
Is it likely to be a dirt road when we're done, the way it is today?
Well, it's all for the most part compacted aggregate base, and any material that goes back in will have to be compacted aggregate.
Have you been over here lately?
Is it a little more on the dirt side?
Oh, there's puddles that could swallow dogs. Yeah.
Yeah. The idea, in those two villages where we have that aggregate base, every year they bring in, a couple land dumps, that sort of thing, and do the compaction and whatnot. Some years it doesn't get done. And then as you do snow removal, you create divots and you get water and all that. When we did the propane system, I don't know, I probably brought in about probably over 150 ton of base rock in that village and put it down. But as you know, it all gets pushed out and worn down and mixed with the native materials. So Steve, you and I will need to track in the specifications how much material needs to be freshened up on top of that road surface when they're done. Like we call out 4 to 6 inches of new fresh or something like that.
Yeah, and I mean, we'll make sure that we get good video and photos and stuff of before, so we can make sure that we're making them put it back to the way it, at least as good as it was. And if you, but Chris,
a little better.
If we can talk about how to write that spec to make sure everyone's happy with how they leave it. Yeah.
Yeah, you want your driveway to be clean and all that. All very delineated. Nice. Yeah.
Good news.
Yeah.
Limited jackhammer work.
I think the West Village will dig easy. Sorry, go on, Shalene.
No, that's okay. I just was pulling up the schedule and I'm pulling up one that may or may not be 100% the most current, but it looks like all the environmental stuff we're going through, basically opening up on August 1st and trying to wrap it up in the next 60 days following that, because there's the public review for CEQA, et cetera, and so forth. So that's when the environmental processes will be taking us through, making sure everything is good to go.
Okay.
Just to follow
This
up on that
question's for
question.
Chris. Yeah, I know you talked about trying to coordinate, to get the economies of scale with abandoning the legacy septic systems. We could be doing the same for the installation of the sewer laterals from the sewer main on each individual property.
Yeah, and
Or should
I would
we-
anticipate that being the same contractor. They would go in, make the disconnection, reconnection, and then abandonment of the tank. And then move on to the,
Okay, great, thank you.
yeah. And then, re-veg, freshen up the driveway and then move on, yeah.
Any other questions? No? Just as a recap, obviously, I'm here. Please don't hesitate to call or email. And we will be having more meetings as we get farther through the process at specific points. We haven't defined when the next one will be yet, but probably around the time the environmental document is released for public draft, we might have a meeting. And certainly we'll be going to the board. And I will be giving them an update on the project at some point in the near future, in the next couple months, just because they don't come to these meetings like you guys are. So I feel like it's important to keep them involved too. I do the best I can with my general manager updates that are verbal, but I think it'd be nice to give them a nice written update too, and some slides like I've shown you. So I will probably take this same presentation to them within the next month or two. And then we'll do some more information meetings as we get farther along. We want to do our best to keep everybody informed, and please pass on the word to people that aren't here tonight, and let them know they can go to the website and the recording will be up there. There's also a schedule up there and a frequently asked questions. And as more information becomes available, we'll be posting it up there too. So anything else, Shailene?
Nope, I think you covered it all. I do encourage looking to the website, because as we do get reports finalized and design studies done, environmental documents completed, everything's going to be posted up there. Sugar Bowl has its own link. So when you go to the homepage, you just click on Sugar Bowl and you're taken right to your information. So you don't have to waste time trying to figure out where you can find the information specific to this effort.
Very good.
Yeah, and definitely use me as a resource as well, homeowners, because, we'll be helping coordinating a lot of this as well. So I hope to have somebody I can dedicate to this from a project management standpoint, and we'll be able to answer those questions. But I've got a couple of remote workers I have to.
Hey, quick question for Chris. This is for my wife, who's smarter than me. The electrical lines are all quite vulnerable above ground in the West Village. If we're digging a big trench down the street, might it be a good time to consider burying the electrical also, or would it not go in that same place?
Yeah, by ordinance, it can't go in the same trench. It has to be 10 feet of separation. I've right on my dry erase board, I've got magneted the plans for the West and East Village undergrounding utility projects from, I don't know, 1993 or something. And it was all dropped because of the discussion around differential benefit to whatever homeowners and whatnot. So the project sort of got shelved. And I dug it out recently because I know this question was coming up. But basically, it would be a dry utility trench. So it'd be AT&T, PG&E, and Suddenlink, or whatever they call themselves now. And they won't even allow me to put my own dry utility. Like if I wanted to do my own fiber distribution, I'm not allowed in that trench by PG&E's own rules. So that's a project. The next question would be, well, since you're disturbing the whole street, why not do both of them at the same time? Good question. We've anticipated. I don't know the answer to that at this point. It may be too difficult to pull off. And then also we'd have to rekindle this project, get it re-engineered by PG&E. And the West Village, the good news is the East Village is very complicated, the West Village not so much. Because a lot of it is underground in the West Village already. So it's just sort of that secondary distribution. That's the stuff you're looking at going to the houses that needs to be dealt with. But it has the same issues, right? It's all about the laterals, or do some of them hit trees, go down, and then they have a, they're bottom fed, or some aerial and they have a weather head, and then you might have to change the electrical out, and
You can play jump rope with ours.
yeah, gets a little complicated, but that's something I'll discuss with our development committee and see if we want to parallel this.
Thanks.
Well, if there's not anything else, I think we can call the meeting adjourned.
Agreed. Yeah, and just, again, remember the website's out there. Steve's contact is out there, Chris, mine. Any questions, any concerns? We want to make this as smooth and upfront as possible for everybody involved, and just let us know what we can do and answer your questions.
Very good. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you.